In our continued discussion using the critical events worksheet you've been provided, we want to look at how the Enlightenment and the revolutions that followed were really affected by a scientific revolution. Not only was the absolutism of the European monarchs a factor in changing people's minds about power and about who's in charge, but also some challenges dealt through the field of science would play a role. Let's start with Galileo. It says Galileo was put on trial before the Inquisition in Rome in 1632. Ideas about science and universe during the Middle Ages in Europe had been largely guided by myth and were supported by the Christian Church. A Greek astronomer Ptolemy had supported the Aristotle view that the Earth was the center of the solar system. This geocentric universe, or this geocentric solar system, was accepted, and it really worked for Christianity. It was easy to identify that people lived on the earth, heaven was above, and of course the bad places were below. Challenges to that, though, are going to start to pop up in a European frame in the 1500s. Mathematical power will be able to prove a heliocentric solar system by Copernicus in the early to mid 1500s. This isn't going to gain a lot of steam or create a lot of problems simply because his stuff won't be published until he dies in 1543. Kepler will follow in the early 1600s with mathematical laws that provide explanations on how the planets move. All of this, again, showing that what it thought to be true perhaps was not, or was not. Galileo is going to be able to use a telescope to observe these heavenly bodies and see that these many held theories are actually false. Observation then in the early 1600s supports the heliocentric solar system. So where does all this fit in? The conflict with the Roman Catholic Church, again, their power is being disputed, their authority is being disputed, will put him on trial. He will be declared a heretic and will only be allowed to live because he recants. He goes and he says, he made a mistake, or he apologizes publicly, so to speak. He's put on house arrest for the rest of his life. However, his ideas are published upon his death and will continue to spread and be influential throughout Europe and beyond. New ideas then of science supported by fact will change people's minds and challenge ideas of even faith. So, how does Isaac Newton fit into our story? Isaac Newton will define the three laws of motion through his work, The Principia. Newton was a mathematician in the late 1600s, and old views of astronomy and physics had already been shattered, i.e., the work of Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo. However, Newton was able to use math to verify that objects were ruled by a singular force of motion. The idea dealt with universal gravitation, bodies being attracted to one another. Objects are attracted based on mass and proximity, and this determines the gravitational pull. It says his ideas of laws become a baseline for physics for years to come, and these laws become provable. So this idea that you can prove stuff with math, this idea that you can prove something to be true and irrefutable, carries over to also challenge other ideas about not only the way science works in chemistry, in medicine, but also the way people interact. So we're going to see challenges to even the way societies are run, the way they interact with one another. It's important to note that Newton did not discount religion. He saw the universe as a huge clock, and of course a clock needs a clockmaker. So he was not saying that his ideas refuted an existence of a God. Finally, Francis Bacon develops a scientific method. It says new ways of thinking by people like Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler would lead the way to solving new problems with science. The method of identifying a problem, developing a hypothesis, running tests, observations, then conclusion, the work by people like Sir Francis Bacon, who was not even a scientist, and René Descartes, are both going to work toward development of this system, the problem solving, and thus science is going to be able to overcome medieval scholars' reliance on these ancient theories. Today, science is still using observation and experimentation to attack issues. Then it also is used to influence those who are looking to advance learning in medical science and those advocating changes in social, political, and even legal issues. And that's where the Enlightenment guys are going to come in. They're going to use these ideas of observation and running tests when it comes to the way people are interacting. And that's going to challenge the status quo of the absolute monarchs. Thanks.